First one is, if you could bring back a dead scientist and have a beer with him or her, who would it be, and what would you talk about?
Oh, good grief. I think MacArthur would be high on my list, and particularly the stuff he was doing late on, which then you could argue kind of set up macroecology, really. So I think that would be a really interesting conversation, yeah.
You think he'd be impressed with where the field has come?
I don't know. I wonder whether he was actually a good deal more mechanistic than the field itself has become in some ways, much more concerned with species and species niches and so forth in quite a local scale, which I don't think macroecology has managed to make the connections through to very effectively yet.
Mm-hmm. So, Art, do you remember, did Peter Grant also say MacArthur? That name, I thought MacArthur had come up once before.
I don't think he did.
No?
Yeah. I think he chose
Darwin.
We have a
Darwin
lot of
is
Darwin
often
choosers, of course.
the popular one. I always love to hear the non-Darwin answers. Obviously, just for novelty, we all agree about Darwin. Yeah. So Kevin, another softball before we get into the science details. What's the most beautiful place you've ever been?
In an odd way, so I co-led the first expedition back to Gough Island since the 1950s. So that's one of the most remote islands on the planet. And in most people's notion of beauty, probably has no beauty whatsoever. It's a harsh, tough place. But in its own way, it has one of the biggest seabird populations in the world, and is a rugged. So one of the things we did there was we were estimating how, because it's a place where you can pretty much count the historic landings, you can then say what's the link between how many species introductions occurred and how many times people landed, which is tough to do in most parts of the world because the level of human activity has just been too great. So it was you can almost count, how many other people have ever been there, and that has its odd kind of beauty to it.
Yeah. I mean that's not much of the world anything like that anymore. That does make it beautiful.